Well, I was just getting ready to review these two swords, or rather big knives, or war knives, as they were called in medieval Germany, one by Cold Steel and the other by Nielo swords. And then I found out that they are apparently discontinued, or at the very least, they are back ordered at Call of Athena, which usually means they won't be available anytime soon. Maybe at some point in the future, but they might simply be out of production and you might not get them anymore. At least currently you can't. So there isn't much point to a regular in-depth review the way I normally do it. But just to wrap it up and be done with these, I still want to give you my opinion. So the main problem was getting a good edge on these because they both came very, very dull. They barely had an edge to speak of. And since I wanted to compare these two directly, and there aren't too many Messer reproductions on the market, I figured it would be interesting to let them battle it out directly, so to speak. So my instructor and I exchanged a few attacks and parries. Now, edge pairing, of course, opens a whole can of worms. The old flat versus edge parry debate. I used to be in the flat parry camp, but at Blunt Iron we practice mainly with edge parries, and I very much see why. At this point there are good reasons for it, which I'm not going to go into now because it would make the video too long. I should actually do an updated video about that at some point. Either way, so that is a way to compare the blades directly, and I can say that the Nielo Swords Messer is far harder than the Cold Steel. So certainly better steel, or at the very least better heat treatment. It actually cut deep gouges into the blade of the Cold Steel Messer while receiving relatively minimal damage. I mean, there were some nicks in there as well that had to be repaired, but repairing the Cold Steel took a lot more. A friend of mine who is a local blacksmith offered to repair the worst damage, which he did quite well, and then I used one of my sharpening systems to put a pretty decent edge on it. At least it feels like a good edge. When I then retested it, it still didn't cut very well, which may have to do with the blade geometry, or it might also be some other factors. It's a little hard to tell. This one here, as I said, was easier to repair, but the edge isn't terribly good either currently. And at this point, I'd rather not wear out any more belts or stones on these, because for me, it's not really worth it. So I'd rather pass them on to someone who does not need them for cutting practice. And so as far as the handling is concerned, this is a little tricky for me because I'm very spoiled, obviously, by the Albion Knecht Kriegsmesser, which is, it set the bar very, very high. It's incredibly well made, very well designed. You know how much I like the thing. And there's no point whatsoever in comparing them. I mean, it literally costs 10 times more than this. Of course, I have to say something about the handling. It's challenging to remain unbiased when I know just how lively one of these can feel and how well it can perform. At the same time as that, the price difference is a factor of 10. So I have to evaluate this for what it is. And in this price range, it's actually not bad. I mean, personally, I don't like how it handles. I gotta be honest about that. But just because I don't personally like it doesn't mean it's objectively bad. Now, I have one objective objection. That's it, that sounds weird. An objective objection. One objection to the way the handle is shaped. Namely, it's very strongly rounded. And it seems like the ratio of the width to the thickness is a little bit off. What I mean by that is if I switch this around so that I'm holding it flat forward, it doesn't feel much different than it does this way. Yes, it does feel different, but it's not as distinct. It may seem trivial perhaps, but it does make quite a difference. Now, one thing I have to say between these two here, if you have large hands, you would probably prefer this one because it is thicker and wider than the Nielo Swords Messer. You can see that here. But to me, this one feels much, much better for several reasons. Like for one, it's not quite as rounded. This one here is really an obviously rectangular cross-section, and you can feel immediately where you're at. Also, it's got this groove here in the center. It's almost like a fuller for the grip, and the Albion one has that too. A lot of historical ones have that. And this makes much more of a difference than you might think. This feels really good in the hand. It allows you to index the fingers well, and it seems to make it more secure in the hand as well. It's a really good feature. The balance on this one is noticeably better. The blade thickness tapers from the handle to the point, and on the cold steel, it's the same thickness throughout. So that makes quite a difference. This one here feels much more lively, whereas this here is a bit more of a dead weight. Again, not too bad. I mean, it still handles decently overall, just not as good as this. As far as aesthetics is concerned, this one looks way better, in my opinion. This one here is pretty simple. I mean, if you like very minimalist utilitarian look, then this might still appeal to you. You can see it's a very simple cross guard, simple pommel as well. Whereas on this one, you've got the ends of the pommel the ends of the guard are flared and twisted. There are some decorations here. This groove goes through the handle and the pommel as well. Of course, you've got the more complex hilt here. It's got extensive hand protection on both sides, and the blade is triple fullered, so it also adds to the aesthetics. Now this one costs substantially more, and it's still got its issues. As mentioned, the edge that it came with is really no better than the one that the cold steel had, and also the guard came loose pretty quickly, which really at this price I don't find acceptable. The guard should be fixed independently. Now it's not a hard fix. I'm going to shim this and prevent it from moving, but it shouldn't be like this. And this is where the cold steel wins in terms of structural integrity. It's much better assembled. The guard is still perfectly solid. It's been deformed from one particular test that I would not recommend, but that was kind of funny. And otherwise, the handle scales are still perfectly solid. They're also attached with screws, so if you had to, you could replace them without a problem. The pommel also seems solidly attached with a nut. This is the man-at-arms version of cold steel's messer. There is also another version, the standard one, if you will, that's differently made. So it's got the pommel threaded on, and it seems like a relatively thin thread. And I've seen at least one person in a review mention that it fell off, it broke. And so this one here seems more solidly assembled. It's also a bit heavier, apparently, even though the two, they look almost identical in the picture. So the regular non-man-at-arms version of this messer, as far as I can tell, is not as sturdy, but a lot sharper. So this is where people got a little confused by how poorly this cuts, because they have the other version and it seems to have a much better edge and cuts better. All right, to give you a summary, in terms of price and value for money, cold steel wins. This one is substantially cheaper and reasonably well made for the price. Historical accuracy, Nielo wins. I've seen a picture of a messer from a museum that looks just like this. So it seems to be very close to the original, and the cold steel, on the other hand, doesn't look much like the originals. Handling, Nielo wins. Better balance, better overall feel, more agile sword, a better shaped handle, just much nicer to use, actually. Cutting performance and edge, as it comes, both lose. They're just not very suitable for cutting practice. You need quite a bit of patience and need to be good at sharpening. And you essentially need to fix the blades. So it's not enough to simply retouch the edge. You have to reprofile the blade to really make them work well. Hilt assembly, cold steel wins. Still perfectly solid, nothing has loosened up. The Nielo one has loosened up. this footage should give you an idea. I was chopping wood with a cold steel messer, no worries about it, held up well. Then I grabbed the Nielo one to do the same, and my expression says it all. Just didn't trust the hilt. Steel quality, Nielo wins. It wrecked the cold steel. So the steel seems to be much better, harder, more durable. And finally, I should mention that only the cold steel comes with a scabbard. And it's quite a nice scabbard. They seem to have put some kind of plastic in there. It looks like nylon perhaps. So that keeps it in place nicely and prevents the blade from getting scratched up. So pretty decent design actually. So if you're looking for a good cutter, get neither of them, or alternatively get the regular cold steel messer, which seems to be a lot sharper and performs better at cutting. If you want something that's historically accurate and feels good, go for the Nielo one. If you want an affordable, sturdy beater that could also serve as a project sword, get the cold steel. I'm going to put both of them up on eBay if anybody's interested. I'm done with them and have no reason to keep them. Also, I frankly need the funds, which leads me to the next topic. Namely, there are a number of things that I need to put up for sale because, well, things haven't been going so well since the Adpocalypse, as you might know, and I'm still trying to keep a steady stream of new things to show and test and review and all that. So I have to make sure that I have funds available. One of the things I'm going to put up is this buckler here. I originally planned to test and review it, but then I decided against it because it would be kind of a shame to beat it up and get scratches and dings on it because it's really, really nice. It's got pretty elaborate etchings and it just looks great as a decorative buckler. You could have it on a wall or use it with an outfit at an event, things like that. I think it would that would make more sense than messing it up in practice. Although it is functional, it's the right kind of steel and thickness, and you could very well fight with it if you wanted to. There's only one thing I don't quite like about it, namely the orientation of the grip. It's taller than it is wide, so that works well if you just hold it in front of you like this. But if you want to use the historical sword and buckler techniques from 133, you quite often hold it like this. As you throw a cut with a sword, you have to hold it like that to guard your arm. So I feel like, you can still do it. It just feels to me a little bit awkward, and I prefer when the grip is essentially rotated 90 degrees compared to this. So it's wider than it is tall. It just makes it feel better in the hand. But yeah, either way, it seems pretty well made. It's riveted here. 2 places. It's also stainless steel, which is nice because it means that you don't have to worry about it rusting. There's really no maintenance involved. This has been standing around for actually I think a couple of years at this point, and it's still perfectly shiny, no rust or anything. I didn't even need to oil it, so that's nice. It also came with this belt. I haven't quite decided yet if I want to put this up as well. When you check the video description, you'll either see it or you won't. I'd much rather keep it. This is the Ginunting by Traditional Filipino Weapons. It's a really nice one, and I don't really want to get rid of it, but at the same time, gotta do what you gotta do, right? So, as I'm not sure yet, it may or may not pop up. Also, these gloves from Purple Heart Armory, I got them for rapier practice, but I've just decided lately to focus more on longsword and dewsack and get better at that first before messing around more with rapier, because rapier is pretty sophisticated and you've got to practice it quite a lot to really get it right. It's very challenging and technical. So yeah, I'd much rather pass these on to someone else who might have more use for them. They're not even broken in yet. I think I used them once maybe, and yeah, they're essentially like new. And then I'm also going to prepare 2 mystery boxes, which will have a variety of knives, axes, things like that, smaller things. There's going to be 1 sword in one of them. I'm going to mention that in the auction. And so just as a few examples, I don't want to show you too much because it is a mystery box after all. Stuff like this folding karambit, for example, and this knife here will be in one of them. So just 2 examples. There's going to be a bunch of other things, and I'm going to just mix it up. Most of these will be used, as I said, most likely used in one of my videos or several, and yeah, there's going to be some higher valued ones, some lower. I'm just going to try to make it fairly even. Not sure how interesting that really is for you folks, but personally I kind of like the idea of a mystery box, and since I'm getting rid of a bunch of stuff anyway, might as well, right? So yeah, that will be linked down below. Oh, and I almost forgot this one as well, the Extreme Ratio Resalza. I'd much rather keep this one. It's a really nice knife, but budget is tight and it's got to go. There are several expenses that have kind of crept up on me. Those things that I ordered a while ago for a video that are now getting ready to be delivered, and the income has kind of been doing this, and the expenses have been doing that. So don't worry, I'm not going to run out of material for videos anytime soon. I tend to prioritize getting new stuff to test and show you, as opposed to keeping older stuff which you've already seen. And don't get your hopes up that my Albions are going up on eBay anytime soon. Those, all of them except the Caithness were gifts from Kara, and in one case Albion. So outside of extreme emergencies, I'm not going to sell those. I think that's all I've got for right now. So thanks for watching and have a good one.